Hey, welcome to the Unblocked podcast. We're here at our Team Focus office here in Mobile, Alabama. My name is Aaron Dais. I'm here with Mike Gottfried and Joe Gottfried. And today we're just going to dive in and talk a little bit about their upbringing in the great state of Ohio and learn a little bit more about Coach Gottfried and Joe Gottfried. So, welcome, guys. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. So, just for our listeners, let's start with a maybe brief outline of y'all growing up in Crestline, Ohio. I've been able to have the privilege to travel to Ohio and visit Crestline for myself more than a few times now. So, what was Crestline like growing up with each other?
Well, we grew up in a railroad community, and at that time the community was about 5,500 people. We had the New York Central and the Pennsylvania Railroad, and the Pennsylvania Railroad was the big industry in our community. And our dad worked for the railroad, and our uncles worked for the railroad. Really, everybody worked for the railroad. But it was a good community. It was a very close knit community. Good athletic programs, good support from the community. It was just really a great place to grow up.
And Joe talks about all the young guys that were in our neighborhood on the south side. We were living on the south side, so we would walk to the games at Kelly Park, and with the south side, we had a song, and we were walking through the neighborhoods, and we got out there, and the big south side would play first. And Coach Hudson was the caretaker of all of that. And so the big south side would win the game, and then we would play. The little south side we would play, and then we would go to the swimming pool and learn how to swim. But I never did that. I always took my extra change and bought another Royal Crown, and didn't go and didn't know how to learn how to swim. But Coach Hudson was a really a figure that the ladies and the men, everybody loved him. And everybody wanted to be like him. I remember when I was coaching, I got my first job in Roseville, and I'm talking to somebody, said, "Hey, coach," and I'm thinking to myself, who's he talking to? And when I heard Coach Hudson, it was Coach, and so I knew he was an integral part of growing up, and all the guys going into coaching and the ladies, and he affected the community, wouldn't you say so?
He really did. He was a former football coach and basketball coach for Crestline High School. And we were in junior high and, a little bit, some of them in elementary. And we always looked up to him because the players always liked him. And even after we finished our high school careers, we still relied on him a lot. We called on him to help us recommend us for a job. And he would write a letter or he'd make a call. But we had so many young people that came out, went into coaching because of one person. And that was Merle Hudson. And John DePietro was his former classmate of mine who recently passed away, the football coach at Crestline for a long time. When we got back from elementary school, we would go up to the stadium that was only 100 yards from our house, and we'd watch him practice, and we'd watch Coach Hudson out there, and it was just a person I want to be like that. I want to be a coach someday. And so many of us went into coaching from Crestline.
And
Right.
you didn't want to disappoint him because he was tough now. He was tough. Gates Brown one time had a triple, and he came around third base and went home. He said, "You're out. You're out of the baseline." And everybody was shocked, but he was fair, and what quite a man.
Yeah. So it sounds like he was quite the positive influence within the community of Crestline.
And
And a lot of other people. We had pastors, we had priests, We had teachers, and I was talking to one of 1956 graduates of Crestline, Stan degree. And he told me, he said, I had better teachers at Crestline than I had at Ohio State. What a say, what ability that they had those kind of teachers.
And he became an engineer.
Yeah.
So, but it was a close-knit community. And we had rivals 5 miles from Galion, 10 miles from Shelby, 10 miles from Bussard. So you always had competition in baseball, football, and basketball. So we rarely ever had any problems in the community.
I think the other thing is we were always playing. We always had something to do. Now, when school was on, we played at Kelly Park. And when school was in, we played at school. We didn't have a field. We had to go out in the snow and the rain and play in the concrete. But nobody cared. Everybody wanted to enjoy everything.
Aaron, it was really interesting because we had in that community, there was a South Side team, East Side team, West Side, North Side. Everybody had their own teams. But Mike and I had got that bug to be a recruiter someday. And we'd recruit Gates Brown, would be on the other end. He'd be on the west side. And we'd get Larry Somacher. He'd be on the north side. And they could never figure how you got all those guys on your own team and they don't live in your area.
So we kind of hedged a little bit.
I guess we would be illegal at that. If we would have been penalized, I guess if we'd had rules.
Yeah, I can understand that. You're trying to make sure your team wins. And it sounds like you had buddies all over different parts of Crestline. So that's great to hear. Let's I'm sorry, you got anything else, Coach?
Go ahead.
I wanna transition into
on the baseball part. I was a catcher in baseball.
Okay.
We had this umpire that named Joe Scully, and he was worked on a railroad and he was a fireman. So he had two jobs. So I'm down there crouched down and ready to get the pitch, and he would lean on me. And you know what? I knew he was sleeping then. So I'm down there ready for the pitch, and if the pitch was anywhere near a strike, I'd yell, strike! And Joe would go, strike! Nobody ever thought of that.
That's how you work the system, Joe.
I thought of that real quick when Mike was talking about the baseball and so on.
That's a good one. Well, let's transition into your college years. Okay, so you're growing up in Crestline, you're graduating high school. What was your thoughts towards college? What was your plans?
An interesting question, because I was thinking a lot of times college wasn't on my radar. But all of a sudden, Jack Harbaugh graduated from Crestline High School and he got a scholarship from Bowling Green. Then Joe gets a scholarship to Kent State. So I guess I assumed that we're all going to college. That's the way it is. And they were the guys that went ahead of us and taught us. And the college is good. College can be good.
Awesome. What about you, Joe? What was your plans? Did you feel the same way as Coach Mike?
Yeah, I did.
As far as college?
We always wanted to be a coach. So we knew to be a coach, you had to go to college. And if it wouldn't have been to college, it would have been the railroad. And our mom and our father always talked about, go to college. So it was really important for us to go. And there's so many of people of our era went into coaching. I would guess probably there's 15, 16 that ended up going into coaching
in college,
in the college area. And one day when Mike went to Moorhead on a football scholarship,
yeah,
and I'm coaching in a Bloomville high school, and my mom calls me one Sunday, and she said, Mike just called. He's just down there as a freshman. He's ready to come home.
No negative.
No, I want to tell this.
Yeah, you're going to tell. We're going to wipe this off.
Now, let me tell this story because it's interesting. And it's positive for Mike. She called me at 6 o'clock. I think it was 4 o'clock. And she said, Mike wants to come home. It was a Sunday, and I'm teaching the next day on Monday. And so I said, oh, okay. I went to Crestline and picked up Jerry Harbaugh, our cousin. I said, Jerry, will you ride down to Moorhead, Kentucky? 5 hours now, 6 hours. So he said, sure, I will. So he and I rode down, and we had a little Volkswagen, a little bug going 5 or 6 hours. So we got down there, and we talked to Mike for 4 hours, argued with him and everything. And I said, Jerry, we're ready to go. I said, Mike, we're leaving, but you're not going with us. If you want to go back home, you find your own way. So Jerry and I took off, and we left. I didn't know if he was going to follow us and walk or something like that, chase our car. But you know what? He stayed there and had 4 good years.
Back then, you could hitchhike. I was hitchhiking home. So
I got a good hitchhike story if you want to hear it later on.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. So I want to go back. You mentioned your dad, Joe, real quick. What was your family dynamics growing up within the household? And can we talk a little bit about your father?
My dad was from Upper Sandusky, Ohio, about 30 miles away. And he was an outstanding athlete in football and basketball and baseball at Upper Sandusky. And he went to college at Findlay College, but he only stayed a semester. He went there to play football and ended up coming to Crestline and ended up met my mom and et cetera like that. But we always idolized him. Unfortunately, we lost him at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
But he was such a good role model, took us to games all the time, came to our games when he was an engineer on the railroad, so he always wasn't around. But when he was, he followed us.
Tell him what he told you when you walked into the gym one time to watch a game.
He told me one time, he says, pick out a player and follow that player that you like. And he helped me pick the player out. He wanted me to pick it, but he really helped me. And it was Dwayne Yerke that was a senior on the basketball team. I was an 8th grader, I think. And he told me to watch everything about him when he's playing, when he's not playing, how he comes out, is he upset, things like that, if he's brought out of the game. I did that. So I picked out kind of my hero and my model that I wanted to be like. And years later, when I was coaching at Ashland, I didn't know he came to one of my games and never said a word. He was a very, very quiet person, but I wish I would have known that. His sister, Carolyn, told me about that years later. But my dad told me that. I used to tell young players on the 7th and 8th grades when I was coaching, pick out some players on our team and kind of follow them. And sitting on the bench, they mope when they come out of the game, or they're team oriented. So it was a good lesson.
Yeah. And your dad told you to do that. Okay.
My dad told me to do that.
I got you. What was one thing that sticks out to you, Coach Mike, from your dad? Maybe some kind of advice he gave you that always stuck with you?
Oh, he would always say, you got to be better than Joe. I'm sure he was talking to Johnny and saying, you got to be better than Mike. And he was a competitor and quiet, but he was quiet and a good man. And
Aaron, how about this? The night before he died, he took me to the bowling alley. There was a pool table in the bowling alley, and we played pool. In the first 2 matches, he beat me. In the second one, when he beat me, I took the pool stick and I threw it on the table. I said, I quit. He grabbed me by the arm and he said, don't you ever say that again. 6 hours later, he died. Wow. And I never forgot what he said. I coached for a lot of years, ran a college program, but I always had that, don't ever quit.
Yeah. That evening that he died was a traumatic time.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, we heard him fall, going to the bathroom, and fell on his back. And Mom yelled to Joe, go get the doctor. And the doctor lived a couple blocks away, and she told me to put a washcloth on his forehead. And I did that. And Johnny stood in the hallway watching all this. And it probably lasted an hour. And then they told us, yeah.
And Aaron, I went down, knocked on the doctor's door. It was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
January 3rd, it was cold during that time. And I knocked on the door. He came out and he said, I told him what happened. He said, come on in and you can ride back with me. I said, no, I'll go on back. I walked up the steps and Mike was holding Dad. So I can still see that. And then he passed away right in his arms.
Rough night because we didn't know the degree of what was going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And without him, and we had to move. I moved with the Harbaughs. I went in with the Harbaughs, and they had a lot of kids, so they didn't need another person in there either. But they took me in, and Joe and Johnny went to Grandma's, and for the life of me, I couldn't think. Bill Harbaugh was a tough guy, really a tough guy. And now I'm with the tough guy, and he said, you eat everything on your plate before you get up. Don't drink anything. And so he had his rules. And I'm thinking, long time, when we're in Mobile now, we're all in Mobile. We're sitting at a restaurant, sitting talking. I said, hey, Joe, I said, I don't understand why Bill Harbaugh picked me. Why Mom would let me go over there with Bill. And he said, she asked me. And I said, I'm not going. So
Mike asked Mom, why didn't Joe go there? She said he didn't want to go. So it was Bill Harbaugh's the grandfather of John and Jim.
yeah.
Aaron, you okay? Frozen.
Awesome. Well, if you guys can still hear me, I want to go into talking a little bit about team focus, Coach Mike, because with team focus, I feel like God had a plan for your life, and you lived a life that would lead you to the founding of Team Focus, as well as you playing a part in that too, and supporting Mike, Joe. So what, for our viewers, what is Team Focus?
Team Focus is a mentoring program where we're going to walk with these young men through life. And that there's so many lessons to learn. And when you don't have a father, you miss some things. And we didn't have a father, we missed some things. We missed, the relationship. But now all of a sudden, Dad's gone. And so in Team Focus, we're going to hit them. We're going to stay with them. We're going to be with them. They're going to have some cases where it's very difficult, and so we're going to be there for them.
Awesome. And I think about your both of your lives growing up, and we've had the opportunity to sit down many times and talk about different stories. I think about times where you guys are in school and you're playing, baseball or basketball or football. And it always resonates with me because I grew up without my father as well. When you talk about how you were at the games and, you always saw a lot of the guys there and their fathers were with them, and how that made you feel inside. But I also learned from both of you that, like Coach Hudson, there were different father figures, and what's the word? Father figures or substitute fathers within your community that were there to help guide both of you, like you going over to the Harbaughs, and Joe, I'm sure you getting some some good upbringing and education and motivation from other figures within your community, whether it was a football coach or something?
Aaron, you had a good point. He had to quit baseball. He
Mm,
had a good baseball team. When Dad died, he had to take a job and work. I didn't
mm,
have to do that, but he did.
Scott, when that happened, Aaron, going back a little bit, I was 2 weeks from my 16th birthday. Mike was 11 and Johnny was 7. And, you know, you get a picture here a little bit of, if I can show that, showing our family.
mm.
Got that right in my living room. And I see it every day. But I don't ever want to forget, you
Yeah.
know, and when I was coaching, I remember going my first coaching job, and I came out on the floor, and I looked out in the audience because a lot of the players' dads were there. And I looked for my dad. I looked for that seat where he might be sitting. I can't. When I was coaching in college, I did the same thing. It never went away. Uh, it's been over 60 some years, and when I think about it, tears come to my eyes.
Yeah.
You'd think after 60 some years that wouldn't happen, but it does. But I know someday we're going to be together again.
Right.
Right?
I said the same thing when I coached national anthem. When they were playing the national anthem, I thought about Dad
Mm,
for every kid.
Aaron, Mike was coaching at Kansas. He played out at Southern Cal. And Mike had these linemen were 6'2", 6'1". Southern Cal had 6'4", 6'5". And Johnny and I, our younger brother, we were on the sidelines. And Mike came over. He said, "I think I have a chance. We got a chance to win." I looked at Mike. I didn't know what he had to drink that day, but I looked at those Southern Cal guys. I thought they were NFL guys. We ended up upset them 26-12. And I tell you what, I stood there and cried. I looked up.
mm,
I thought, God, would have been nice.
yeah. I'm
Dad,
sure
look
he
at
was smiling down. I'm sure he's a very, very proud man of his sons. Let's talk about you in administration, Joe. When it came to, say you're playing basketball, you're in college. How did you get to? I know about your background being at South Alabama, being the AD there. Um, can you talk about that transition, how you got there?
I coached high school basketball for 8 years, and then
Hmm.
I was coaching college for 11 years. College was Ashland College, where actually I graduated from, and then I went to Bloomville. Then I went to Sandusky Perkins and a few other schools, and I got the job at SIU. And Gail Sayers was the athletic director when I was there. Ended up like a lot of coaches, some get hired, some get fired. I ended up getting fired from after my third year. I thought if I had one more year, we could have got the program going. But Gene Bartow was the athletic director at UAB and the basketball coach, and I got to know him because we played him when he was in a tournament at Missouri. And assistant athletic director's job was open, and he called me, said, "Would you be interested?" I said, "Well, I'd like to look into it." So I came down here. I liked it, got hired, and then 2 years later, the athletic director and basketball coach, Cliff Ellis, went to Clemson, and I ended
Hmm.
up got promoted to the director of athletics and spent 26 years there as the director of athletics.
Wow.
26 years, and fastest 26 years I've ever had. Because I had a
Yeah.
great time everywhere I was at, but this was good.
How many people you brought to Mobile too?
I didn't know where Mobile was at. I had no idea. I recruited around the country, but I'd never been here. And
Hmm.
so we ended up get down here, and after 10 days looking around, I thought, this is really a nice place. And ended up called Mike, called Johnny. My daughter came. We ended up with 30 families from Ohio,
A lot
Wow.
of players too.
and a lot of players that moved here as a result of our leading and calling them, and et cetera, like that.
It's
Um,
a lot.
so but we never got any money for impacting the community.
Brought a lot of good people
Like
here.
people.
Yeah. Let's transition to you, Coach Mike. What about you? You're playing college football. Um, where did your life kind of take off from there once you got out of college?
I think, playing college football, I wanted to coach it, and I knew that I wanted to coach it. And Mickey was such a big part of that. So we were getting married about that time, and I took my first job, and he was very strong and very strong in supporting Team Focus, and so
Hmm.
a lot of things happened there, and but I keep remembering that story where the young guy said, "Hey, coach," and I didn't even turn around because the only coach I knew was Coach Hudson. But so it's had an effect on you.
We had a grandmother, my dad's mother, Aaron, and she would get in her car, and she had very, very limited income. And she would get in her car and go to our games, Mike's football games, my basketball game. Because I didn't coach football, we didn't have football, and Mike didn't coach basketball. So we used to go and watch him play, coach football, and he would come over and
Hmm.
watch us, in our coaching basketball. And Mimi, she was called Mimi. She would drive her car. Sometimes she would drive to Moorhead, Kentucky, 5 hours. She had no idea it was 5 hours. It took her probably 10 hours to get there because she was in her 70s. She would
Yeah.
drive. Tell you a quick story. She brought Johnny, our younger brother, with her to watch Mike play. And after the
Hmm.
game, she wanted to stay, and Johnny said, "No, I want to go home." So the game was over about 6 o'clock, and so she got in the car. Johnny got in the back seat. He wanted to sleep, so she drove around the mountains. You had to go around the mountains to get to Ohio.
She stayed on the
And
same route.
all of a sudden, Johnny woke up and he's back in Moorhead because she missed the road. Instead of going that way, she ended up going back downhill.
Oh
She was
gosh.
ahead of her time, Aaron. I went
Yeah.
to a meeting with her in New York. We're going to New York on the train. I'm free on the train because my dad worked on the train. And so we get to New York, and I said, "Mimi, I have an idea. I read the paper all the way up, and the Yankees are playing at home. They're playing Kansas City or something." So I said, "Mimi, I'm going to meet you on this block right here at Times Square." I said, "I'm going to meet you." She said, "How are you going to get to the game?" I said, "I'm going to ask police because back then they had police on every corner." I was 12 years old or 11. So I said, I started out, I said, "How did I get to Yankee Stadium?" They said, "They go down 3 blocks and then get on the train." And so I did. I got back. I could have not got back, but she was for it. She figured out we'll get together.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Imagine that, 12 years old,
And I sat in
running
the
around Yankee Stadium.
I sat in center field. That's where they put the dollar tickets. And the Puerto Ricans had most of those seats. And but I had one that day and got to watch the Yankees.
That's quite the accomplishment for a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
I
but
couldn't
I knew
imagine doing that.
the police would gear me where I needed to go. I wasn't worried about
Yeah. I wouldn't try that now today. Not by myself.
it.
Not at
Amen.
12. I don't want to do it at 34. Awesome. Well, so what were some of your highlights in your football coaching career, Coach Mike? Maybe at Pitt or somewhere else.
It just every win was an important because you're growing the program all the time. When I went to Murray
Yeah.
State, they had one for ages, and so we started winning and got strong.
Hmm.
And Cincinnati was the same way, and Kansas was a tough job, but it was a good job. and then Pittsburgh. And then I went from Pittsburgh to doing TV, which I had no idea what I was doing. They offered me the job, and I said, I don't know if I can do this. I told Mickey, she said, you just go talk, you'll figure it out. So, and that's 18 years of ESPN. And those,
every time I think about ESPN, I always think of this famous line from you. Something about you killed the King's English. Is that what you would always say?
killed me in English. I did.
Well, I'm sure they enjoyed having you there. You had to be doing something right if you were there for all those years, right?
Well, we got cheap help.
You know,
Cheap help.
to this day, if you talk to coaches, they say Mike and Ron Franklin, they were on 18 years.
Yeah.
And they were the best. And Mike never criticized the coaches. And I'm sure the ESPN wanted him to probably do a little bit, and the coaches always respected that.
Hmm.
They did. They called me in one time. They said, hey, we hired you, and we're not sure you can criticize your coaches that are your age. I said, they looked at me and said, can you criticize them? I said, no. And they said, well, why did we hire you? I said, I have no idea why. But I'm not criticizing coaches. But I'll teach you. I'll try to reach out and figure out what they're doing, why they did what they did, rather than criticize the guy.
Yeah.
So it worked out all right.
I can understand that.
Tough on the referees.
You always go after a referee.
That too. You get to spend a lot of time with that.
Yeah, Johnny was working with us, and he and I traveled together for years.
Mhm.
And he would go to the stadiums and he would bring people in, and he had a good time. It was a great time for me being with him.
Aaron,
Yeah.
if you got a few minutes, like to talk about Gates Brown, who we played with, and one of the top athletes to ever come out of Ohio.
Yeah, I know a few stories about Gates Brown.
You know,
There's a lot of them. He was a year ahead of me, an outstanding football player, a good basketball player, and he probably could have played in the NFL, but he got into some difficulty and ended up going into the prison. If you ever watched the movie Shawshank Redemption, he was there.
Mhm.
4-man cell, 13 years, but he got out a year and a half later because he was a baseball player in Ohio. The warden there, they got a hold of the Indians and the Tigers, and he ended up getting signed. But we went to many, many Detroit Tiger baseball games. I even took my high school baseball team that I was coaching one time. Gates got us 16 tickets, but we followed his career for many years. And I'm telling you, we lost a good friend. He passed away a number of years ago, but he played 13 years with the Tigers.
won two national championships, won 2 World Series, and he
Great
was
accomplishments.
integral part. And they said one year they gave him the most valuable player, and they gave him keys to the car. They said next year, if you do the same, we'll give you the car.
Let me tell you a story on him. In the latter days, I called him up in the ACC. Mark was coaching at NC State, and they played the Big Ten Challenge before the season starts. And I said, Gates, would you like to go see Michigan and NC State play it in Lansing, in Detroit or Ann Arbor? And he said, I hadn't seen Mark coach for a long time, so he said, we'll do that. I said, okay, I'll get a hold of Mike and et cetera. So I got a hold of Mike, and we flew up to Detroit. Gates was on a walker then. It was 42 years ago that he played for the Tigers, 42. So we ended up, I knew the athletic director at Michigan. We got tickets, and we drove into the parking garage area of the Tiger or the arena, and the usher came out because we had an early pass. And Gates got out of the back seat with a walker, and the usher said, "You're Gates Brown, 42 years ago." Okay, we walk in the building, and Gates' grandson with us, four of us, and we got in when we get in that door. All the ushers were standing there because they hadn't gone to their spot yet, and they all started pointing. He said, they had to be saying that's Gates Brown because he didn't know Mike and he didn't know me and he didn't know his grandson. So
Yeah.
they put us right on the baseline, and all those ushers before the game started came over and shook his hand. The mayor or the governor of Michigan was there, not the present governor, but the one before. He came over and he said, "Thanks for the memories." And all four of us now are tears coming out. We got in the car, and I'll never forget. We get in the car, and Gates said, "Joe," he said, "they never forgot me." 6 months later, we buried him in Crestline.
Wow.
And but he was, just such a good friend.
Yeah. That's a wonderful story.
If our dad had not passed away, when he had to go before the judge, he would have adopted Gates, and Gates never would have gone to jail. There were other four white guys and Gates, and they all got off because their dad said, "We'll have them go to the
military." Yeah.
Yeah, and Gates didn't have anybody there. 1 year earlier, if my dad had lived, we'd have had a brother in our family.
Yeah.
But
Well, it sounds like, despite that, you still had a really good friend and a brother still at the same time, even though, his life went in the direction it went. He still had people there to support him, despite. Mhm.
we used to go over there and play in the prison. We'd take a basketball team, and they played.
Really?
Outdoor guys could come in and play them. And there were 300 prisoners in the audience, and they booed the prisoners because the guys who were playing because they had privileges. And so we're down in the locker room changing clothes with the prisoners. And Gates would come over and he'd have a stack of these envelopes. Said, "Joe, will you mail these?" So I had to put them in. It probably was illegal. I might have got caught. I've been in prison. So I packed those in there, good stamps on them, and mail them. I never looked at what they're doing.
It's helping him out. I like that. I wanna, because that his story and having support, despite maybe not having a lot of family in his life, nobody there, nobody in his corner at that time. Coach Mike, with Team Focus, you and Mickey founded this organization in 2000, and it really is, similar to that story of just being a support system for a lot of young men growing up. What are some of the accomplishments that, you've looked at now 23 years later with Team Focus? What are some of the accomplishments that stand out to you with the organization?
How many young men stay with us and had a great time and now are in great jobs like yourself? And the problems were there, and they would bring the problems to us, and we would solve the problems. And I think that we're a problem-solving organization because, they had a lot of questions, and then I could talk to them about TV and football coaching, and Rocky all could talk football coaching, Ray Dempsey, and so most of them were involved in athletics. So a lot of good stories out of that.
Aaron, tell about your story as you came up in Team Focus.
Okay. Well, I joined Team Focus when I was 13 years old. And I have a younger brother who's a year younger than me, a year and a month. And he joined at the same time I did. And this is back in 2002. And just 13 years old, I didn't know what Team Focus was. But of course, I fit the criteria for it. I didn't have a father figure at home. I met my father at that time, one time when I was 6 years old. He worked for Amtrak. My mom had moved from New York to Mobile, Alabama. So I was the first country baby. I would like to say I was the first country baby. And But yeah, we were growing up here, and when I was 6 years old, he traveled down on Amtrak, had never seen me, knew about me, and I got to meet him that one time, and then he went back up to New York, and I didn't hear from him or see him after that. And it was later on in life that I learned, what his life was like. I stayed in touch with my aunt for years. So even when I was in college, I was continuing to communicate with my aunt, my father's sister. And I'll never forget, I'm leaving classes from South Alabama. And, I just gave her a call to try and just say, hey. And a man answered the phone. Now, my aunt was no longer married. And so I didn't know who it was that answered the phone. And um, come to find out later on, my aunt called me back and was like, that was your father. So he suffers from short-term memory loss. So he can't remember me. He can't remember my mom. He doesn't remember a lot of things in life. He remembers a lot of the long-term stuff, his family he grew up with. But because of some accident that happened back when I was probably 10 years old, he then suffered from short-term memory loss. So when I called and I was like, yeah, this is Aaron, Jimmy's son, it just left him in confusion. So I was in shock because I had not talked to him since I was 6 years old. When I got off the phone with my aunt, the first person I called was Coach Mike. I called Coach Mike because, of course, Coach Mike and all of the other mentors in Team Focus have walked me through this process of forgiveness, of growing into the man that you believe that you could be, and not playing, having that victim mentality and saying, hey, because my life looked like this and my father was, this, I'm going to be like him, and those negative aspects, because I didn't have a positive father figure like you both had growing up. Mine was a negative father figure, and everybody's story is different. But I just felt like I had to call Coach Mike and just say, hey, Coach Mike, you'll never believe who I just talked to. And he was like, well, who was it? I was like, I just talked to my dad on the phone. He's like, well, how did it go? I was like, it was fine. Like, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I wasn't, I didn't feel sad or mad or anything like that. I felt like I handled it well. And I felt like Team Focus had prepared me for something like that later on in life, because we go through all of the stories that people have. And one thing that I found out was like, the, I may feel one way about my story, but there are other people out there that have stories that I would consider, in my opinion, are harder lives to live than the one that I was given. And from that point on, when I got that epiphany, I was like, I'm not going to feel bad about myself anymore. I'm not going to feel bad about my life, because I had that foundational verse to sit on, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you a hope in the future, plans to prosper you. And I had to believe that. I couldn't just memorize it. It's easy to do, but I had to believe it and I had to live that out. And so, having that encounter and talking to him, and then being able to now be in my sixth year as a director of Team Focus here in Mobile, and be able to talk to the young men here in the community, you don't have to grow up thinking your life is, you're only capable of so much. We tend to put ourselves in this box growing up because of only all the things that we see around us just within Mobile. But Team Focus helped to expand our vision, because at the age of 16, I was able to travel to DC, Tennessee 4 times, Texas, California, Tennessee, all these different places, because of my relationship with Team Focus, and because of the investment they put into me. It expanded my vision, and I think of stories of Coach Mike when you talked about how you visited this one football stadium growing up. You went, saw a game. Later on in your coaching career,
Wow.
you had coached so many different places. You'd been in so many different stadiums coaching these teams and winning games and gaining more experience. And then you found yourself back in this town, and they said, hey, we've remodeled this stadium. It's much bigger. We got lights. It's amazing now. Like, it's so much better than when you were first here. But then what happened is you got to that stadium and you went in there. You said, why did I ever think that this was a great stadium? It's because your perspective had changed. Your vision had
Marion,
been expanded.
Marion Coliseum.
Marion
You
Coliseum.
were right in there when you took pictures, and I still looked at those pictures. I said, I don't believe this is this small.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, the main thing, Jeremiah 29:11, so valuable to all these young men. Whether they're in the war, or whether they were in the Army or Marines or Navy, and they were put that on their bed. And I think about, you know, that that verse is strong. And I look at this family and I say, you know what? All five of those are going to be together someday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're going to see them.
But yeah, that's a bit of my story,
Yeah.
Joe. I mean, it was an amazing experience growing up. I'm grateful and I'm thankful that Mike and Mickey, followed the plan that God, the path that God laid out before them, so that all of the people that have been impacted, through this program could benefit from it. And it's been an awesome experience. And it doesn't always we you tell me stories about how this happened to this person, this happened to that person, and um some people don't always make it, some people don't always make the right decisions. And we've had members within Team Focus who still chose to go down the wrong path. But out of the 8,000 plus members and people that have come through the program, I think about the impact that Team Focus has made in their lives to cut down on that number of people that may have ended up incarcerated, to cut down on that number of people that may have ended up in prison or in some kind of accident because they didn't have Team Focus to be an influence positively in their life. And even now, we have people that reach out to us that, we had a gentleman reach out that I'm in a picture with when we were much younger. I won't say his name, but he called to the office to talk to Coach Mike, and he has a minimum of 15 years right now. And right now, he still thinks about Coach Mike and how Coach Mike tried to make an impact in his life and help him out and guide him down the right path, even now in his adulthood. And his story's not done. He still has things that he can be done in his life. And I feel like Team Focus has given him that seed of hope even now where he is. And so even in those stories, there's still hope there that young man can, progress in life and say, you know what, I still have time. I still can do great things. I still can be a positive role model to other people and be somebody I'm proud of. Um, so, well, what do you hope for Team Focus to accomplish in the future? Because we're 23 years in right now. What do you see for the future, Coach Mike?
We're getting ready to make big plans. And we need a facility and be able to tie in with a college where they can come to this this place and go to college and work, study, learn different things about themselves, and
Yeah,
we're just a step away from this power becoming awesome, where they can go to college and get a degree online, and so it's going to be good and no cost.
yeah, I think that would be an amazing opportunity for these young men and their families. Really awesome.
And we'll get the alumni together over there, and they can
Right.
still teach and still talk to every young man that comes through Team Focus.
Awesome. Well, I think they'll all be looking forward to that opportunity. Because
I'm
it's
looking
it's
forward to it.
it's awesome how we still have so many alumni that just are involved in reaching out, like a John Allen who just took 12 of our guys up to the Alabama game a few weeks ago. That's somebody who was in Team Focus when he was 12, 13 years old. And, now he's married. He's got 3 kids, a business, happily married to his wife, 10 plus years. And that's somebody I grew up with.
Yeah.
And that was an awesome trip. And, without Team Focus, I mean, that's something that would have never happened. And that was a lot of those guys' first game at Bryant-Denham Stadium. And, now we're taking guys to South Alabama for their football games, thanks to Joe and the relationship you have with them.
You've taken guys to Nick Saban.
Yes, we've been to 2 Alabama games to see.
And
Yeah.
Nick was all in
Yeah.
Focus, and so it's been good, and we appreciate what you've done today, Aaron.
Yeah.
And,
Awesome. Well, it's been wonderful having you. Those that are watching the Unblocked podcast and listening in, I hope that, these stories just are a blessing to you all, and that, you had some laughs and, thought about some of these stories, and maybe they can impact you within your life. Maybe you can share this with somebody that could benefit from it. You might know some people that are here locally in the Mobile area, or just in Alabama in general, or Ohio. I think anybody would be, willing and happy to tune in and to just listen to Mike and Joe Gottfried and everything that they had to offer within this podcast today.
the word of mouth has helped us find young men across this country, and we've had so many people from out of state come and be a part of Team Focus. So thank you, Aaron, for doing this.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to thank Unblocked Podcast for giving us the opportunity to do this. To learn more about Team Focus, you can visit www.teamfocususa.org. We have an Instagram page. We have a YouTube channel, just like the Unblocked Podcast. We also have that website and Facebook channel. And for more, just find those links. Reach out to us in comments if you have any questions, and we'll try and answer those questions. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I hope that y'all have a blessed evening. Take care.
Thank you.